Welcome to Crime Clueless. We're your hosts. I'm Jenna.
And I'm Laura.
It's a Sunday morning, November 13th, 2016. Cottage Grove, Minnesota. The kind of quiet, gray morning that feels like every other Midwest Sunday. Stephen Allwine has just returned home from church. He pulls into the driveway. Nothing looks disturbed. He walks inside. The house is quiet. Amy isn't upstairs. He calls her name, no answer. He notices the light is on in the basement. He walks downstairs, and that's when he sees her. Amy is lying on the floor, and there's a gun nearby. Stephen rushes back upstairs and calls 911. On the call, Stephen tells dispatchers that he has just come home from church. He says he found his wife in the basement. She's been shot. There's a gun near her. He tells them he doesn't know what happened. He believed someone must have broken in. Police arrive quickly. They move through the home. Amy Allwine is pronounced dead in the basement of her own home. Amy was 43 years old. She grew up in Minnesota and built her life there. Her faith was important to her. She and Stephen had been married for about 15 years. They were active in their community and in their church community. Friends described her as thoughtful, gentle, kind. She was the kind of person who didn't demand attention, but quietly anchored the room. She was the steady presence there. Most importantly to her, she was a mother. Her 9-year-old son was the center of her world. Her life revolved around school routines, church on Sundays, and her job. She worked in healthcare. At work, she was steady, she was dependable, someone who showed up for people when they needed her. She had this normal suburban rhythm. There was no public history of chaos, no documented spiral, no dramatic unraveling, which is why what happened in that basement felt so impossible. Because this wasn't a woman living on the edge of something violent. She was living what appeared to be this stable, rooted life. And all of that combined is what makes the next part so difficult to understand. Now, I mentioned they had one son. He was 9 years old. That morning, he was home. He was
No.
upstairs, mhm, while his mother was downstairs in the basement. Officers secure the scene. They notice that there are no obvious signs of forced entry, no shattered windows, no kicked in doors. The firearm near Amy appears to have come from inside the home. And I tried to find where they kept the firearm, but I wasn't able to find that information. Stephen tells police he had been at church. Members of the congregation confirm seeing him there. For now, the story seems straightforward. A husband leaves for church, a wife stays home. He returns and finds her murdered. But detectives would eventually learn that this story may have started long before that Sunday morning. When officers arrived at the scene, they didn't know what they were walking into. All they have is a husband who's called 911. He says he came home from church and found his wife shot in the basement. They clear the house first. They go room by room. They're upstairs. They look in closets. They check the garage. No one else is inside. Their 9-year-old son is upstairs, physically unharmed, but confused. Officers keep him separated from the scene. Detectives begin processing the basement. They see Amy on the floor and the firearm nearby. There are no signs of a struggle, no signs that something happened throughout the house, nothing overturned upstairs, no broken windows, no forced entry at the doors. The home doesn't look ransacked at all. It just looks lived in.
Okay, so are they thinking like a burglary at this point? Or what are they thinking?
At this stage, they don't rule anything out, but usually burglary scenes tell a story. You've got drawers pulled open, electronics missing, jewelry disturbed, entry points forced. And here they're not seeing that. Like I mentioned, the gun near Amy appears to belong to the family, which means that whoever pulled the trigger, if it was indeed a burglary, brought nothing with them or maybe knew they didn't need to. Investigators begin establishing a timeline. Stephen says he left for church that morning, and congregation members confirmed seeing him there. He returned home late morning. He found Amy. He calls 911. It's clean, linear, understandable. Detectives photograph everything. They bag evidence. They check for fingerprints. They do gunshot residue testing on Stephen and on Amy. They canvass the neighborhood. Did anyone see a suspicious vehicle, hear a gunshot, notice someone unfamiliar? No immediate reports stand out. And then there's the child upstairs, a 9-year-old boy inside the house during the shooting. Investigators have to ask, did he see anything? Did he hear anything? Was there movement inside the house that morning? There's no indication he witnessed the shooting, but the fact that he was home narrows the window of what could have happened.
Yeah, so that's kind of confusing to me. I would feel like if there was a shooting in the house that he would have heard that, or if someone broke in, he would have heard something. Wouldn't that feel chaotic, especially with him being upstairs? That doesn't make sense to me.
Agreed. It doesn't make sense to me either. You would expect if it was a burglary, some sign of urgency, noise, disruption. You would expect evidence of someone trying to get in, a shuffle, screaming, something.
Yeah.
But early on, all detectives can do is document what is there and what isn't. They document no forced entry, no obvious theft, the weapon from inside the home. They have Stephen with an alibi that's supported by a whole congregation. On paper, it doesn't scream one clear answer, it just raises quiet questions. Autopsy results will later help narrow down the time of death. From trial reporting, the medical examiner placed Amy's time of death in the late morning hours on November 13th, 2016, consistent with the period when Stephen was at church. More specifically, testimony indicated that she was likely killed between approximately 8:30 a.m. and 10 a.m., which again is during that window when Stephen was at church. For now, investigators preserve the scene and begin interviewing. They talk to Stephen in more detail. They talk to the neighbors again. They talk to members of the church. They try to understand Amy's routine, her relationship. Has there been any recent conflicts, anything unusual in the days leading up to that Sunday? Because sometimes what solves a case isn't what happened in the moment, it's what was building long before it. And as detectives begin digging into the Allwine's life, they're about to discover the answers might not be inside the house at all. In the hours after Amy's death, Stephen stays at the house. He speaks with investigators, he answers questions, he repeats his timeline. He left for church that morning. Amy had decided to stay home. He returned. He found her in the basement. He called 911. It's the same sequence every time, clean, consistent. Their son is taken to stay with family, and the house becomes a crime scene. Neighbors begin hearing whispers. They see all the police cars coming and going, the yellow tape. The unthinkable has happened in this quiet, normal, safe subdivision. In the days that follow, Stephen continues cooperating. He speaks with detectives again. He attends services at church. Members of the congregation rally around him. A grieving husband, a 9-year-old boy now left without a mother. It's the kind of tragedy communities close ranks around.
And they don't have any suspects at this point or anything. No one they've looked into. They don't have any thoughts. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. At this point, it looks like an open homicide investigation.
They didn't think that she completed suicide. They did think it was a homicide.
Because of how she was laying and where the gun was, they didn't think it was a suicide, but they did test her for gunshot residue just to be sure. I don't believe that they found any on her. At least there's
Okay.
none in the reporting. That
Okay.
was one of my first thoughts, too.
So I feel like they always tend to say that. Oh, there's nothing that points to like a burglary or there's no sign of forced entry. It must be that. There's
Hmm.
so many times where we see that.
Yes. Now, Stephen has an alibi for the window of time investigators are working with, and really, there is no obvious suspect. No stranger caught on the doorbell camera, no break in tools left behind. So, detectives have to widen their lens. They start asking bigger questions, not just what happened that morning, but what was happening in the weeks before it. They look at phone records, financial transactions, email accounts, routine patterns, and statistically, in cases like this, investigators know they have to consider proximity. Proximity doesn't mean guilt, it just means closeness. Closeness means access.
Totally. And that's always the most uncomfortable part because the person closest is usually the ones that they look at first, which is probably so hard for them.
Exactly. And just because police are looking at them first, it doesn't mean they're responsible. Sometimes it just means investigators have to eliminate them as a suspect. Stevens' devices are collected: phones, computers, tablets, standard procedure. We're in 2016, after all. Digital footprints are part of every homicide case. Sometimes those footprints lead nowhere, but sometimes they open doors investigators didn't even know were there. In the meantime, Stephen continues forward. He speaks about Amy publicly. He describes her as loving, devoted, a wonderful mother. He is feeling grief. He's feeling shock. There's a sense that this was random and unexplainable. Behind the scenes, digital forensic analysts begin combing through hard drives, internet history, everything on the computer. And what they find isn't about church. It isn't about the neighbors. It isn't about a burglary. It's about something much bigger, much older. Because while detectives are still working on reconstructing that Sunday morning, they're starting to see evidence that suggests this case didn't begin in the basement. It may have begun online. When detectives seize Stevens' electronics, it's routine. In 2016, you can't investigate a homicide without examining digital life. At first, forensic analysis is slow and methodical. Digital investigators create exact copies of the hard drives. They don't just open a laptop and scroll, they extract data, deleted files, hidden directories, timestamp logs, programs installed months, sometimes years earlier. And that's when they find something unusual. On Stephen's computer, there's a browser installed that most people don't use. Now, Stephen worked in IT and web development. He had a background in information technology and web design development. He worked in a technical role involving software and website development. He was described as technologically savvy, comfortable working online. The program they found is called Tor, and he wasn't someone unfamiliar with how the internet works, which makes his use of Tor feel less accidental and more deliberate.
Okay. I don't think I've ever heard of Tor. What is it exactly?
Tor stands for the onion router, and it's designed for anonymity. When you use a regular browser like Chrome or Safari, your internet traffic goes from your device to your internet service provider and then to the website you're visiting. There's a clean, straight trail. You have the IP address, the device ID, the location data. Tor works differently. When you use Tor, it bounces your connection through multiple encrypted relays around the world, layer after layer after layer, like an onion, which is where the name comes from. Each relay only knows the node before it and the node after it. So, in theory, no single point that you're bouncing through knows who you are or where you're going. Tor is not illegal. Journalists use it, activists use it, people in oppressive governments use it, but it's also the primary gateway to what's known as the dark web.
So Tor isn't something that you like accidentally get on your computer. You purposely download this, correct?
Correct. It's intentional. You have to download it, you have to install it, you also have to configure it. And when investigators see Tor on a device when they're looking into a homicide case, they pay attention. Forensic analysts dig deeper. They don't just look for the browsing history. Tor does a good job at minimizing that. They look at installation dates, access logs, program execution timestamps, residual data fragments, and what they find shows that Tor wasn't a one time curiosity. It had been used repeatedly over months, late night sessions, multiple logins, often while Amy and their son were asleep upstairs.
Was this something he could have been using for work, or were they pretty suspicious about him using this? It wasn't something that he needed for his job.
They definitely considered that. I mean, knowing what he does for a job changes having Tor. Knowing the ins and outs of Tor and why you would use it, they did keep an open mind about maybe if he was using it for work or something else. They don't jump to any conclusions. They're still continuing to dig through what else is on there. And like I said, they're looking at the timestamp, when it was downloaded, how often or frequently it was accessed. It's just one piece of the puzzle. As they're continuing to look through what's on his different devices, cryptocurrency enters the picture. On Stephen's devices, they find evidence of Bitcoin transactions, wallet addresses, exchange activity, gift card purchases converted into digital currency. And here's the thing about Bitcoin that most people misunderstand: it isn't anonymous, it's pseudonymous. Every Bitcoin transaction is permanently recorded on a public ledger called the blockchain. Every transaction, every wallet, every movement of funds. Anyone can see the ledger. What they don't see at first is the name attached to the wallet. But if law enforcement can connect a wallet to a real world person, the entire transaction history opens up.
Okay, so if someone buys Bitcoin thinking it's untraceable, it's not. They can definitely find out who's using that.
Yes, which I've heard so much chatter about recently. People really do think it's untraceable, but it's traceable the moment you make a mistake linking it to yourself. If you buy prepaid gift cards with surveillance cameras recording you, if you use an email in any way, shape, or form tied to your real identity, if you access your wallet from your home internet, you've left breadcrumbs. And detectives are very good at following breadcrumbs. So now at this point, investigators have two unusual things: Tor and seemingly attempts to use Bitcoin anonymously. That combination narrows possibilities and it suggests deliberate anonymity, not casual browsing. And when forensic analysts dig into encrypted messaging remnants, they begin to uncover communication logs. Not complete threads, but fragments, dates, usernames, references to payments, requests, and a location tag that chills investigators: Cottage Grove.
And that was where Amy was killed, right? That's where they lived.
Yes. Months before Amy was shot in her basement, someone in Cottage Grove had been using Tor to access a website that offered something unthinkable. And that's when detectives realized something critical. This case may not have started on November 13th. It may have started online months earlier. When forensic analysts continue digging through Stephen's computer, they begin piecing together fragments of encrypted traffic. Tor doesn't store traditional browsing history, but it leaves traces. It leaves program execution logs, memory remnants, temporary files. When investigators correlate timestamps from Tor sessions with the blockchain transactions, a pattern emerges: multiple late night sessions, multiple Bitcoin transfers, repeated access to a specific hidden service, a .onion address, And that address corresponds to a website with a name that feels like satire, except it isn't. It's called Besa Mafia.
Interesting. That sounds, like you said, like satire, like something fake, but I'm assuming that it's not.
Yeah, that's what most people think. Maybe it's a fake joke type site, but Visa Mafia marketed itself as a professional hitman service on the dark web. It claimed to arrange contract killings. It listed prices. It promised discretion. It accepted Bitcoin. The site said it operated intentionally, that it had, quote, no loose ends. And investigators now know something chilling. Months before Amy was shot, someone in Cottage Grove had accessed Besa Mafia more than once and had sent Bitcoin to the wallet listed on that site.
Okay, so they now knew that someone in the town where she lived tried to hire a hitman.
Yep, because,
Jeez.
yeah. Here's the twist though. Visa Mafia isn't what it's claiming to be. It's largely a scam site. And eventually, parts of it were being monitored by law enforcement. Investigators had access to communications, payment logs, wallet addresses, usernames. Actually, long before Amy was killed, authorities were already aware that someone in Cottage Grove had paid thousands of dollars in Bitcoin to have a wife murdered.
Okay, that's awful that they knew someone in this area was doing that. And that this was all before she died, right?
Yep.
And okay, nothing came of that. There was no further investigation there to who it was.
I believe when it came on their radar, they were desperately trying to follow that trail and connect who it was. They didn't have enough time. They hadn't got there yet. Side note,
These
when I
people
first
seem that they had connected it. I guess I don't know how long this has taken them. Do you know how long?
about 6 months,
Oh, wow.
yeah, when I first found this case, the headline said that she had been warned that there was a hit on her before it happened, but that's not true. They didn't
Mm.
know who it was on or who was trying to arrange it. They were actively working on it.
So they just knew it was someone in their town.
hmm And now
Jeez.
that they have all of Steven's devices and they're finding Tor and BitChain and Visa Mafia, their pieces are coming together really quickly.
Ugh, that's so sad.
I know. Yeah. We'll get into it a little bit more though.
Yeah, I'm sure we will.
Yeah. This means when Amy was found shot in her basement, detectives weren't just investigating a sudden tragedy, they're investigating something that they might have had an idea had been set in motion months earlier, just not by who or directed at who. When investigators pull the communication logs tied to the Cottage Grove user, what they see is not emotional, it's not explosive, it's not someone venting in anger. It's very structured, transactional. The user communicates under the alias Dog Day God. He initiates contact through the site's internal messaging system. He asks about prices. He asks about the process. He asks how payment should be delivered. He sends Bitcoin in installments. He provides identifying information about the intended target, his wife. He shares details about her daily routine, when she's home, when she's alone, where she typically is in the house. He sends photographs, clear ones, enough for identification. He asks about confirmation procedures. How will he know it's done? Will it look like an accident? Can it be staged as a robbery? The tone isn't rage, it's logistics.
Okay, that's almost worse. It's like he's scheduling something, a delivery for his house or landscaping or anything. What is wrong with these people? We talk about it so many times. If you don't like the person you're with, get a divorce or something. What is wrong with these people?
Exactly.
Can't
I
even.
cannot. I agree. It's baffling.
Yeah, it's baffling and just tragic. So sad for their son.
So sad. The tone, too, is baffling because the messages show so much forethought. They show, like you said, just like he's scheduling landscaping. The payment total, get this, approximately $6,000 in Bitcoin. It's transferred to the wallet listed on the site. The site responds with reassurance. It's vague but confident language. Quote, we are working on it. Quote, be patient. Weeks pass, nothing happens. This user, Dog Day God, follows up. He asks again about timing. He pushes for a completion date. At one point, he's frustrated. He asks for a refund because, from his perspective, he paid for a service and it hasn't been delivered. And here's where
So wait,
investigators see
you said that this site is largely a scam, but are people actually able to hire hitmen through this site?
possibly, usually is just taking your money. And
Yeah.
it's not, there is one here in the US, like Hire a Hitman, it's called, that anytime someone requests, it's just forwarded to law enforcement and it's not
Yeah.
all encrypted and hard to find who's doing it. This site isn't working with law enforcement, but they are aware of it. They look at it, they try to find both who's running it, who's requesting services, but it's harder because it's so encrypted and on the dark web. The
Yeah.
scam is more they take your money and they don't do anything,
Okay.
usually. Yeah,
Usually, so
I
sad.
know. Yes. Investigators see something really telling in those timestamps. These messages span months. This wasn't a one night decision, it wasn't a single impulsive click. It was repeated logins, repeated communications, repeated payments. While all of this is happening, life continues as normal. Go to school, go to church, have family dinners. And then eventually the communication stops. No confirmation of a completed hit, no evidence anyone showed up. And then months later, Amy is shot in her own home with a gun from inside her home.
That's so wild. You said it was $6,000.
Yeah,
Jeez. That's terrifying.
it is. It's too affordable. Like, what is happening?
Right.
To me, part of what makes these sites so dangerous is that they market violence as transactional. It's simple, something you can outsource. And the transactional part of it
Yeah.
has been sitting with me as I've researched all of this.
It's just like, here, get on and set your delivery date, and here's your payment. And we just
Mhm,
order my wife taken out. That is
right.
wild, like so scary. That is really
Agree.
dangerous, like you said.
Mhm.
Oh,
It's too simple. I mean, it's not simple
right?
to get to the site, but for somebody that has the knowledge or I don't know, the motivation to figure it out, it's simple.
That's the thing, the motivation and the know how to.
Mhm.
Like they're ordering from Amazon basically.
Yes,
And
exactly.
that's so scary.
Mhm. Here's where things get stranger. The hit never happened. Weeks pass, then a month, maybe two. The user becomes impatient. And like I said, at one point, he requests his refund.
Yes, his refund from his Amazon order, like I said.
Right, right,
Jeez.
exactly. This tells investigators something about mindset. They can tell it wasn't rage, it wasn't a heat of the moment decision. It wasn't a one time ask that he then regretted and went back on. For him, it really was transactional, planned, scheduled, budgeted. And when the job doesn't get completed, the communication slows. And then months later, Amy is shot inside her own home. Now, detectives aren't asking whether a burglary happened. The question that becomes impossible to ignore is this: did someone try to outsource a murder? And when that failed, did they take matters into their own hands? Did they hire someone else to do the job in a different way? Digital anonymity only works until someone makes a mistake. Now, looking at Stephen, detectives are looking at two parallel stories: a husband who went to church, came home to a tragedy. Again, he was at church. The autopsy showed that her death happened while he was at church with people that can back that up. So they're wondering, how do we fit these things together? At the beginning of this investigation, that's really what they had. They had someone who went to church, came home to this tragedy, and also someone in this town who spent months trying to hire a hitman on the dark web. Digital investigators begin working backward with the Bitcoin payments. Every transaction on the blockchain is permanent, it is time stamped, it is immutable. They identify the wallet that received the $6,000 payment. They trace the incoming funds, wallet to wallet, address to address. Eventually, the trail leads to how the Bitcoin was purchased, not through an anonymous suitcase of cash, but through gift cards, prepaid cards bought at retail stores that are then converted into Bitcoin through an exchange platform. And that's where the first crack appears. Because when you buy gift cards in person, there are cameras, there are receipts, there are timestamps. When investigators pull surveillance footage from the store where the prepaid cards were purchased, they see him.
They see Steven, right?
Yeah.
That's where
Yep.
I'm going.
They see Steven purchasing the cards that were converted into Bitcoin and sent to Visa Mafia. The timestamps align, the amounts align, and now the blockchain isn't abstract, it's connected to a face. But investigators don't stop there. They need more than just, he tried to hire someone, but then this random burglary happened and it's a coincidence, right?
He ordered it a long time ago and nothing happened. He requests a refund. It wasn't happening. So I'm sure they were thinking, was it still him? Or I guess that would be a huge
Mm-hmm.
coincidence if it was something else. But you have to wonder if it was from this hitman purchase.
Right. We have to go down all of those roads. Investigators subpoena the exchange account used to convert those cards into cryptocurrency. This won't surprise you. The registration email is tied to Stephen. The recovery address is tied to Stephen. The login IP addresses, those are coming from his home internet. And that's where the anonymity myth collapses. Tor may mask where traffic goes. Bitcoin may hide your name behind a wallet address. But once a wallet is connected to a real identity, everything connected to it becomes traceable. And Stephen didn't just make one mistake, he made several. He accessed his cryptocurrency wallet from his home network. He logged into associated email accounts from devices that were seized inside the house. He used identifiable financial instruments to fund the transactions. And each step alone might not be definitive, but together they absolutely form a chain.
So they're thinking it is Steven at this point. Like we said before, it may be hard to investigate those closest, but good thing they did and seized all of his stuff.
Yes, because without seizing his devices, I don't think they would have been able to put those pieces together. I mean,
No,
maybe
for
eventually,
sure.
but not nearly as quickly.
Yeah. Because he had such a solid alibi, he probably thought he was safe that they wouldn't take his computer
Hmm.
and look at all of his
Exactly.
stuff. So
Right.
good thing they
I think
did.
that's absolutely right.
Did they have any tip off, like any signs or anything that caused them to take his stuff? Do you know? Did anyone feel anything off between them?
Honestly, no.
Hmm.
No one had anything negative to report about the two. They've been married for 15 years. They go to church every Sunday. They seem like a normal, nice, happy
Happy?
couple.
That's
Yeah,
so
you're
sad.
normal neighbors. Exactly. I really think if they hadn't have been able to find out that there was a user in Cottage Grove that had been looking for a hit on his wife, then maybe they wouldn't have taken all of his devices.
Yeah.
I don't know that for sure, but it does make sense to me.
Did the investigators for this case know about that before?
They knew that somebody had been accessing that Visa Mafia site before this happened.
And then those same
And
investigators were the ones who were looking at this homicide.
it seems like it's the same agency. And when they hear a wife is shot and it kind of looks like a burglary, but really it doesn't, they're like, hey, this is happening in our town currently. Let's look at his stuff and see if it was him.
Because it
And
was
maybe we'll
a
find nothing
wife.
on it. And maybe we have to keep looking exactly to find a different wife who's still in danger.
Yeah. So luckily those two departments were able to connect to
Hmm.
kind of help work from both ends.
Yeah.
That is good.
And I don't know how quickly they took his computer. Maybe a week later, it could have been they're starting this case and saying, hey, we have no leads and working with the whole department. And they're like, oh, well, we've been working on this. Maybe this is tied to your case,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's really interesting. It's good that they had that heads up in the department about this so they could find him because he could have destroyed his computer, you
Oh,
know?
yeah.
He could have gone
Yeah.
and thrown it in the ocean. He could have done something where they wouldn't have had that access.
And that's the thing that kind of is confusing to me. And it must just be he had the alibi. So he thought he was covered because he has this IT background. Then he understands or should understand that none of this is completely anonymous.
Yeah.
If they go through it, even though you've done it in the ways that make it harder, it's not impossible.
Yeah.
So it probably did have to be pretty quick that
Yeah.
they seized his devices. Now, detectives know the digital trail leads directly to Stephen. The username, Dog Day God, username does not make sense to me.
No.
The tour sessions, the Bitcoin transfers, they've got the surveillance footage, the exchange accounts, the IP logs, all of it points to one person, the grieving husband. And then there's something else. When investigators examine Stephen's computer further, they don't just find Tor. They find internet searches, searches related to how to make a murder look like a burglary, how to stage a suicide, how gunshot residue works. And frankly, you can find that last one on my computer too. But the other one, the types of questions that someone might ask if they were planning more than a digital transaction.
Okay. For an IT guy, let's not be searching these things on your
Your
own computer, Stephen.
your home IP address. I
Yeah.
mean, he really must have thought they wouldn't take his devices
He
if
must
he
have been
was,
very confident in his being at church when this happened.
yep,
Like we said
100%.
last episode, criminals are not smart.
Nope, nope.
Just wow.
Now, we know the hit never happened. No one ever showed up from Besa Mafia. The site, like I said, is largely a scam to take your money. There are no refunds. There's no professional assassin waiting in the shadows, which means months after paying for someone else to do it, after repeatedly asking for updates, trying to get a refund, Amy is then shot inside her home. At this point, investigators aren't asking whether Stephen knew about the plot, they're asking something so much heavier. If the outsourced plan failed, did he decide to complete it himself? Once investigators connected the digital trail to Stephen, they didn't stop at the hitman site. They widened the search. Often, when someone is living part of their life online in secret, there's usually more. And there was. buried in email accounts and messaging platforms, investigators uncover something that had been developing quietly for months. An online relationship started through a Christian dating website with a woman overseas in Africa.
Okay. Is this one real? Is she even a real person? Is he being catfished here too and scammed? He's getting scammed
That's
all over the internet for an IT guy.
a very
Like,
good
come
point.
on.
Oh, it
Oh,
sounds like she was real because I did see in court records that they talked to her. She didn't know anything about the
interesting.
hitman side of it.
When you said that, I was like, is that a
Oh
scam
boy.
too?
I That was my first thought too. Was he getting scammed in multiple places?
Is this, it's like a romantic relationship, right? Because it's on a
Yes.
dating site.
They find that it's emotional, it's intimate, also future oriented. The messages weren't casual. They talked about this connection the two of them had, about Stephen wanting to start over, about what life could look like somewhere else. There were conversations about money, about plans, about leaving the life he had. And while there's no evidence this woman was involved in any of the violence, the timing of the relationship matters because it overlaps almost exactly with the hitman communication. The digital records show while Stephen was messaging Besa Mafia about eliminating his wife, he was also messaging another woman about building a new life. Two parallel threads, one about ending something and one about beginning something entirely new.
Awful. So awful for Amy. Like I said before, if you don't want to be in that relationship, get a divorce and figure it out. Why do you have to kill your wife to start a relationship with somebody else? If you're not happy, end it and leave. You don't have to murder somebody.
Exactly. Prosecutors would later argue that this wasn't about rage, it wasn't about a fight that morning, it was about starting over without the mess of divorce. Divorce means lawyers, it means custody agreements, financial division, public questions in this tight church community. But your wife dying, that creates sympathy. It creates insurance payouts. It creates a narrative of tragedy instead of abandonment. The investigators begin seeing how these pieces align. The hitman site message discussing payment, the girlfriend messages discussing the future, the timelines overlap, the secrecy overlaps, and all of this is happening while life on the surface looks stable, routine, normal. They're still going to church every Sunday, taking family photos, just routine suburban normalcy.
Do we know if Amy knew about this relationship at all?
There were indications that Amy had grown suspicious of Stephen's online activity. There were conversations between them about his internet use, but there's no evidence that she knew really most of what he had been doing online. What investigators did uncover, though, was that the emotional affair wasn't fleeting. It wasn't just a few flirtatious messages, it was sustained, detailed, future facing, and that makes the earlier digital trail feel less abstract. Now the question becomes, was this about eliminating an obstacle? Was it about creating an escape? As investigators continued examining financial records, I mean, these guys are really covering all of their bases. When it comes down to it, he does have an alibi. There are no witnesses to what happened. So, to some degree, they have to make sure this is an airtight case to make sure that he doesn't get acquitted.
Yeah.
Another detail has surfaced. Amy had a life insurance policy. It was roughly $500,000. Stephen was the beneficiary. And to be very clear, having life insurance is not unusual. Many married couples carry policies to protect their families. But in this case, detectives weren't looking at one detail in isolation. They were looking at patterns, timing, overlap, because while Stephen was paying thousands of dollars in Bitcoin to a dark web hitman site, while he was messaging another woman about building a future, he was also the beneficiary of a $500,000 policy that would pay out if his wife died. Which, when we say get divorced, divorce doesn't give you a life insurance policy. Divorce means splitting those assets. Then, on top of that, the custody complications, the community they lived in. But if something happened and she died, he gets that money. It means a clean break financially, socially. When investigators layered this financial incentive along with the whole digital trail, the picture becomes a lot harder to dismiss as a coincidence.
Yeah, for sure.
By the time investigators map out the full timeline, what emerges isn't chaos, it's structure. It's months of tour sessions, months of Bitcoin transfers, months of messaging a woman overseas about a future, all while life inside the Allwine home appears unchanged. And that makes this case pretty unsettling. I mean, the violence itself is horrific, but the ability to plan it so quietly over so long is
Yeah.
awful.
And you just like can't wrap your head around that. How can you sit at
Mm.
night paying $6,000 for someone to kill your wife and then get up and have normal breakfast together and go to church together and act like nothing's wrong?
Yes, exactly.
It's just wild.
Psychologists call it compartmentalization. It's a mental defense mechanism. So you split your life into sealed off boxes. One box is husband, one box is father, one box is church member, and another box, hidden, is planning something irreversible. The boxes don't touch, at least not consciously, because if they did, the cognitive dissonance would be unbearable. Compartmentalization allows someone to tell themselves, this isn't real yet. This is just planning. I'm not the one pulling the trigger. That's one of the reasons murder for hire plots are kind of psychologically fascinating. Outsourcing violence creates distance. It allows the planner to feel removed, detached, almost administrative, like you're paying a bill, scheduling a service. And when that service fails, the mental barrier between planning and doing can erode.
So it's like he convinced himself he wasn't really the killer because he wasn't pulling the trigger.
Yes, that's exactly right. Prosecutors argued that hiring someone else was the first attempt, and in his mind, he would avoid direct responsibility. Because if someone else does it, you can tell yourself you didn't physically commit the act. But once that hit never materialized, and honestly, in his mind, he's made so many other plans.
Do you
So
know when he
many.
first started planning this, how long it was before it happened?
So he started talking to the woman in Africa in very early 2016. He started trying to hire a hitman by spring. So April, May, 6 months. Once the months pass, the planning doesn't just disappear, it sits there unresolved. Investigators saw no evidence of sudden rage on November 13th, no explosive fight that morning, no 911 call full of chaos before Amy was shot. Instead, they saw something that looked disturbingly simple: a gun from inside the house, a basement, a narrow window of time, and a plan that just already had existed for months.
That's so crazy. It wasn't emotional. It was just this planned thing that he'd been planning for months, like you said. It's not something that just happened. It was thought out,
Right.
premeditated, all the things.
Yes. And after 15 years of marriage, it's it's kind of disturbing how unemotional
Totally.
and detached he could be about it.
Well, and you said he started talking to this girl the beginning of the year, and then by spring he
Mhm.
was trying to kill his wife. What was happening
Exactly.
before that time? I'm sure he was already fallen out of love with his wife if he was looking on dating sites, but
True.
that's such a fast turnaround to I'm talking to someone else and now I need my wife dead.
Right. And maybe in his mind, it was not this specific girl, but I want to explore my options and I want to start over. So, whether it's this one or a different one, I have to be ready. And the only way I can do that is if my wife isn't in the picture. And I
Yeah.
refuse to do the grown up thing and talk to her about it, go to counseling or get a divorce, separate, whatever.
Yeah.
We're going to go down this path, which is wild. How does that enter your
Yes.
brain?
I don't even. Was there anything in the messaging from that other girl that maybe she put that thought into his mind?
It sounded like she had no knowledge that
Okay.
he would look into something like this, that he would do something like this. I can't tell from what was revealed at trial. I don't have all the records from the case, but we have the records from court. I can't get a good feeling on if she knew he was married or if she maybe thought he was already getting separated. Maybe he put it all on his wife because it was a Christian dating website,
Maybe
like
he
a
told her his wife had died.
possibly.
And that's why he was, because if she knew he had a son,
Right.
maybe he
And
had
he's
said she died. And that's why he had to bring that to fruition because he'd already said
mhm,
that.
right. And if she ends up dying and then you go and be with this other woman, you've got to cover your tracks somehow. I don't,
Maybe.
yeah,
Maybe he didn't think it would actually lead to something. And so he just made something up. And now he felt like he had to make that true. So she wouldn't know he was lying to her.
totally possible. Yeah.
Interesting.
I wish I could read all of their communication back and forth because I'm so interested in what he said to her or
Yeah.
how it progressed, what point they were at. I tried to find out if they'd ever met. It doesn't seem like they had. It seems wild to burn your whole
Whole
life
life
up.
down.
Yeah. Over a relationship with someone you've never even spent time with.
Yeah.
That it makes my heart hurt for Amy. That was
Yeah. For her
probably a rough
son.
year. Yeah. Even more for him in the aftermath. And that's this planning for so long, especially where he had paid for it and it didn't happen. That's so much time to reconsider what you're doing, to
Right.
change course, to not go through with it before you hire the hitman, after you hire him, when he
When
doesn't
it
come
doesn't
through.
happen, when you want a
Exactly.
refund.
You've got so much time to reconsider and time to stop, time to turn back. It makes it harder to understand when someone doesn't do that.
Well, it makes me really sad too, knowing that they didn't follow through with that and she still ended up dying. He was probably asking for a refund so he could try and go pay somebody else to do it.
Right. I mean, I I find it interesting that he's able to send 6,000. I wonder what she thought he was doing with the money.
I
And
wonder if she didn't realize if he's just buying gift cards over time,
yeah,
$50 here, $25 there, $100 here. He could have been doing that for a while.
true.
Maybe she didn't look at the finances. I know
Also possible. He
a
might
lot
have
of
been saying,
relationships. Yeah, a lot of relationships, one person does the finances, the other one might not even look at them.
true. Yeah, she might not have been interested in that. He also might have said he might have literally told her he was buying Bitcoin, watching the stock market, watching the cryptocurrency market. Maybe he did tell her he was buying that as an investment. I don't know.
He could have done that too.
I would love to have Bitcoin from 2016 now.
Yeah, or 2015. He probably started
Yeah.
then.
Yeah. It seems like it was in 2016 once he decided to pay the
That's when he
hitman.
started buying it. But still,
I know, right?
Bitcoin from 10 years ago.
Yeah. And now investigators aren't guessing, they aren't theorizing. They have a digital trail, they have surveillance footage, they have cryptocurrency records tied directly to Stephen. They have months of communication with Visa Mafia, but they still need to answer one final question. Did he actually pull the trigger? Because planning a murder is one thing, committing it is another. The autopsy narrows the timeline. Amy was shot while Stephen was at church. But here's what investigators know: alibis aren't always airtight. Church services have arrival times, they have departure times, they have moments when someone could leave unnoticed, and digital timestamps matter. Phone pings, router activity, device usage logs, they analyze the exact windows. The evidence doesn't support a stranger entering and leaving the house. There's no forced entry, no foreign fingerprints, no unknown DNA. The firearm came from inside the house. The gunshot residue testing shows something else. Particles consistent with recent discharge are found on Stephen's clothing.
Wow. The same clothes that he was wearing to church, they found evidence on.
Mhm. Investigators examined the clothing he wore that morning, and gunshot residue can transfer. It's not definitive on its own, but paired with everything else, it does help bring this full circle.
So his internet search didn't help too much, talking about the gunshot residue.
I guess not. Although I couldn't find anywhere that they found it on his hands, just on his clothing. And it probably would have been weird if he showed up to church wearing one thing, came back wearing something else. I bet
Yeah.
95% of people wouldn't notice, but there's a few who,
Yeah,
for whatever reason, it would strike as odd, right?
for sure. Yeah.
Then we've got his internet search history we talked about, like the gunshot residue. He also searched staging a burglary. He searched how to make a shooting look like a suicide. And all of these were conducted before November 13th, not after, before. That detail changes everything because now this isn't a reaction, it's preparation. Detectives bring Stephen in again. Another interview, another opportunity to explain. They lay out pieces, not all at once, but enough. They ask him about the Bitcoin trail, the gift cards. What about the surveillance footage? Tell us about the tour sessions, the alias Dog Day God, the messages about hiring someone to kill his wife. They ask him about it. He denies it. He says he was curious. He says he didn't mean it. Steven says he never expected anyone to actually follow through. But the payments are real. The communication is real. The timeline is real. And now Amy is dead. Investigators don't need a confession, they need evidence, and they have it. They have digital evidence, financial, forensic, a lot of evidence that is circumstantial, but overwhelming when layered together. On February 8th, 2017, literally less than 3 months, they found all of this in less than 3 months. Stephen Allwine is arrested and charged with first degree murder. The grieving husband, the man who said he found his wife in the basement, is now accused of planning her death for months and carrying it out himself when the outsourced plan failed.
The burglary story, the church alibi, it was just all part of his narrative that he hoped would be enough that they wouldn't try and pin it on him, I guess.
Investigators believe so. The gun, the unknown motive, I wasn't home. It might have felt sufficient to him, and maybe sufficient enough that he thought they wouldn't ever check those things. Maybe he thought with his background and doing it through Tor, maybe he didn't understand the tools that they had to track it down. But unfortunately for him, His digital footprint didn't fade. And when you try to build secret life online, sometimes the internet remembers more than you expect. I do still find it fascinating that he didn't really try to make it look like a burglary. And he
Yeah.
also completely botched making it look like she had done this. So
He
I'm not
forgot to Google
even,
search that part, how to
he
things
did
to
Google
do.
search that. He
Maybe he didn't
Googles,
search pictures. What does it look like when your house is
right.
burglarized?
I guess that could be it because it doesn't feel like he nailed either one. And so he must have just thought his alibi would be all he needs. Pretty wild.
That's so wild. And how horrible. His son was upstairs. That is
Uh,
disgusting.
it is. And I can't understand either why he didn't take his son to church with him so that he didn't risk going downstairs.
Yeah.
Or I I guess if he had taken his son, he couldn't sneak home and go back, which it sounds is
Maybe.
like what they think he did. It reminds me of Betty Gore's murder, how Candy was at that church thing and people
Yes.
saw her there. And I mean, very different circumstances, but
No, I thought the same thing. I was like, this is Betty, the church person, went home in the middle and killed somebody and then came back. The similarities there, the people at church and they go home and kill people and then come back thinking, I guess Candy wasn't supposedly trying to have an alibi, but you
right,
know,
right. She just had to be back to watch the play, but still,
yeah,
people just saw her there at the beginning. They saw her there later on.
yeah,
The decent alibi.
yeah, for sure.
Stephen Allwine's trial begins in mid February 2018. So it took about a year. It lasted 3 weeks. By this point, the narrative has shifted dramatically. He's no longer the grieving husband. He's the man accused of spending months trying to hire someone to kill his wife and then doing it himself when the plan failed. The prosecution's strategy is simple. They don't rely on one piece of evidence, they stack it layer by layer, kind of like Tor.
Yeah. How poetic.
Yes, they have digital evidence, financial, forensic, behavioral. They walk the jury through the dark web communications, the alias, Dog Day God, the Bitcoin payments, the gift cards purchased on camera, the cryptocurrency exchange accounts that are tied to Steven's email, the IP logs that are tied to his home internet. They explain to the jury what Tor is. They explain about blockchain. They explain how anonymity collapses the moment you attach it to a real world identity.
They also taught Stephen about this at the same time.
Yes, exactly.
He's like, I see my mistake
Oh,
now.
I see. They introduce the search history. The search is conducted before Amy died about staging a burglary, making a shooting look like someone completed suicide. They show the timeline, the hitman communications in the spring, the girlfriend messages overlapping, frustration when the hit doesn't happen, and then all through November 13th.
What did the defense say? Because that is quite a lot against him. I imagine they would have had a hard time trying to get him out of that one.
Yeah, the defense doesn't deny the dark web activity. They don't deny that he accessed Besa Mafia. Instead, they argue intent. They suggest that he was curious, that he never believed the site was real. So he just gave them
Just gave them
$6,000 for fun.
$6,000. He knew it
Mhm.
was a scam, though.
Yeah. They said that people sometimes explore extreme things online without intending to act. They argued that there were no direct eyewitnesses. There's no video of the shooting. He has never confessed. They suggest reasonable doubt because digital evidence shows planning, but it doesn't show the moment the trigger was pulled.
I guess they could say too, it shows on here that they didn't do that. So even though he did pay the money, he did hire them, they never went through with that.
Yeah.
But
I mean, it would almost, yeah. Yeah.
that's the only defense I could think of. Yes, we can see he did that. Yes, we have all the information, but they didn't do it. They didn't pull through. He asked for a refund. They didn't do what he paid them for.
So, along those lines, you could say because he was trying to hire someone else to do it, it's because he could never imagine doing that himself. And when they didn't pull through, he abandoned the plan and was going to proceed with a divorce, perhaps.
Yeah,
And
but he didn't search divorce lawyers. You can't,
no, he
you
did
have
not.
to, they do have
I'm trying to
that.
think of how, like, saying that about the hitman.
Yeah, I know. That's the only thing I was thinking. You can excuse that,
Mhm.
but then you have the search history after that too.
Yes.
It's a hard defense there.
Yes, it is. And because they don't have any way to definitively say who pulled that trigger, that becomes the central tension in this case. Is months of planning evidence enough? Is a failed murder for hire attempt followed by a successful in home shooting a coincidence? Is the absence of forced entry even meaningful? Is the overlap between planning and execution too precise to ignore? After weeks of technical testimony about cryptocurrency, encrypted browsers, digital breadcrumbs, Bitcoin, I mean, everything, the dark web, the jury took 3 full days to decide whether planning online translated into pulling the trigger in real life. Ultimately, they find Stephen Allwine guilty of first-degree murder, meaning premeditated, not impulsive, not accidental, planned. Stephen is sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
His internet did not hide him. It documented everything for him.
Exactly. This case isn't just about murder, it's about the illusion of anonymity. It's about someone believing, done, unknown motive, I wasn't home, that's enough. But forgetting that in the digital age, your secrets are time stamped, your payments are permanent, your searches are stored. And if you plan something long enough online, there's a record of who you were while you were planning it. Amy Allwine never knew someone had been trying to hire a hitman to kill her. She never knew the digital plot unfolding in her own home. But in the end, it wasn't a masked intruder who took her life. It was someone who'd been sitting at the same dinner table and then typing in the dark for months. This case became known for the dark web, for Bitcoin, for encrypted browsers, and online hitmen. It became a cautionary tale about digital footprints and the illusion of anonymity. But at the center of all that was Amy, a 43-year-old mother, a healthcare worker, a woman rooted in her faith and her community, someone who believed she was living an ordinary Sunday morning. Her life wasn't a headline about technology. It wasn't a courtroom exhibit about blockchain. It was school drop offs, church services, family dinners, and a 9-year old son who went upstairs that morning and came back down to a world that would never be the same. The internet documented the planning, the courtroom dissected the evidence, but what was lost wasn't digital, it was human, and that's what matters. And that is the story of Amy Allwine.
So sad. I feel so
So
bad
sad.
for her and her son and
Me
really just
too.
the selfishness of her husband.
Yep. It's
Glad that they caught him
horrific.
though. And
Me
like we
too.
talked about too, I'm glad that he didn't get rid of his computer once he did
Hmm.
that hit on her himself.
Yes. I kind of wonder if they would have been able to find it or connect all the pieces
I
exactly.
wonder I wonder if they could have connected him eventually from the other side, like they were working on. It might have just been slower, but I wonder if eventually they could have done that. They wouldn't have had all
Possibly.
the other evidence, the messages with the girlfriend and everything else. But
Yeah.
I wonder if they could have found him from the other side too.
I
I don't
wonder
know.
that too.
It's too bad
Yeah,
they couldn't have matched him before.
I know. That's such a sad piece of this that they knew someone in this town was trying to order a hit on their wife. I I don't know, put it on the 7 p.m. news. Like,
Yeah.
I
Something.
don't know. I know you can't do that, but it is awful that they kind of had a heads up, just not enough to know.
Totally. It's so sad.
And
Like I
like
was
my concern, I wouldn't think they just abandoned it when they're asking for a refund. My thought would be they're probably trying to pay someone else to do it, or they're just going to do it themselves.
That's what I would have thought when he started asking for a refund, that he was going to
Mhm.
go and try and find another service to do it.
Yeah,
Because we know from
exactly.
other cases that have hired hit people, like it is out there. I'm sure that he
Hmm.
could have found someone else. He might have got scammed again, but who knows?
Hey, it would have prolonged it till they could track it down.
Maybe.
Ugh, I know. It is such a fascinating area that I want to learn more about because I am genuinely curious how much information they had, if they could have got more, or if it is impossible without his devices.
Yeah. And I wonder how quickly they were notified of it once he started communicating with them. Were they notified after he paid them? Was it at the initial communication? How long had they been working on this? I do wonder that too.
I wonder that as well because some of the reporting varies and it says that they had a couple months in most of the reporting. Some says a little longer, some doesn't specify. But I agree with you. I don't know at what part of the planning, because if he started in May and then they had known for a few months, that took a while. Or did they find out when he started asking? How long did it take to track? I mean, because if they were able to track it to Cottage Grove, down the line, they were able to see the things that he had sent, pictures of her, her routine, her schedule.
Yeah.
Was there a way that they could have got that before it happened? If they had a picture of her,
Yeah.
they could find her.
Right. And notify her or something.
Mhm.
I don't know. I hope that it wasn't the case that they thought he wasn't going to go through with it when he started asking for a refund. I really hope that wasn't the case.
Yeah. I hope also that it was still really trying to find who it was up until they were able to connect it to him in the
Yeah.
roundabout way.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
hope so too.
Mm. Well, that was a that was an interesting one.
Yeah, let
Was
us
it?
know your thoughts, everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Have you heard of Tor? Did you think you could be anonymous with Bitcoin? And I would love to hear your thoughts on this case. You can share those thoughts with us. We're on social media. We're on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube. We are at Crime Clueless on all of those. If you are looking to read more about this case because you found it interesting, like we did, or you want to see the resources we used to create this episode, you can head to our blog, which is on our website, crimeclueless.com. And we always link to our blog in our show notes. If you have a minute, a fast, free, and easy way to support our show is to give us a rating or a review. You can do those on Apple, Spotify, Audible. Also, if you ever go to YouTube, we would love if you would follow our channel. We are working on growing that so we can put more content out there specifically for YouTube. So you can search for Crime Clueless on YouTube and follow us there. We would be ever so grateful. And I think that's it. As always, remember, refuse to be clueless, careless, or caught off guard.
Not today, murders.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.